Lorine Mason is the author of 6 books, a freelance project designer, and an editor whose work can be found in print, online, and on television. She delights in threading her sewing machine and experimenting with newfound fabric like surfaces. If it fits under her feed dogs, you just might find it sewn into a garment, home decor item, or a trendy gift item. She loves homemade and does not shy away from a challenge. Her business name sums it all up. So far, so good. I'm delighted to welcome Lorine Mason. Hi, Lorine.
Tiffany, it's good to be here. I'm really excited. I'm sitting here in my craft room. I'm a little off center. Let me move that over a little bit. To say that I like a challenge really is what gets me up in the morning. I really like, I'd love for anybody, once we get going here, if you've got something you've thought, can I sew that? Ask me, and I will see if I can come up with a project for you. Today we're going to talk about soda pop can sewing. You might wonder why the heck did I think of sewing a soda pop can? But it was a challenge from a way back, and I actually write a Sewing Savvy newsletter that comes out every 3 weeks. And in the recycling part of the column is where that started. And Tiffany, I believe you have a picture of a hot pad mat that you could pop up. And this was, I used 7-Up pop cans, and I made this, and I actually used some basic quilting techniques. But I thought for the show here today that I would do something that's a little simpler. So that's great, Tiffany. Could we put up the next photo of the coasters? Because I thought this is a fast and kind of a cool craft to do. And so this is using Pepsi cans. And if you notice me on the chat room, I was thanking my good friend Eileen for giving me all the soda cans. Because I'm trying not to drink soda, but I still need those cans to sew with. Who knew? Anyway, so Tiffany, thanks very much. So we're going to go and we're going to make some coasters. Now, I don't know about any of you other ladies, but anybody who has grown children, teenagers, or young 20s, when you could impress your 20-year-old, that's really a coup is what I find. And my 26-year-old daughter thought these were really cool. So that's another reason I thought I'd get going with this. And she's going to get these coasters when I'm finished. All right, to start off, what do you need? You need some soda pop cans, and here we go, just a regular can, rinse it out really well, and then what you're going to do is get a pair of scissors. Now, these are not going to be your fabric scissors, these are going to be your craft scissors, and you want to cut the can across the top, just where this indentation is here, and across the bottom. Once you've got that, how about, this is what we get. And I'm switching companies here and brands and everything else, so don't worry about that. And it's going to have some really rough edges, so be careful that you don't cut yourself. Next, what I do is I take that up to my sewing room, because I usually cut these things apart in the kitchen, and I lay it on a rotary cutter mat, and I have a ruler and a cutter. And this is something else I want to mention. I have a number of these, and when you're cutting metal or paper, and I cut everything with mine, just remember, like your scissors, this blade is never going to be the same again. So I usually put some kind of marking on it so I know that it's a craft blade, and I'll change it out before I start to cut some silk and some other fabrics. I really do sew regular fabrics as well. But anyway, just a word of warning, although I love using these, you are going to ruin the blade for fabric. So anyway, I lay that on my cutting mat, and I simply trim up, I square up my little scrap of soda pop can. Then what I do after I've done that is I cut 3-inch squares. Now I chose, this is really hard to get used to here where I'm kind of, you have to work backwards with the camera. I cut out 3-inch squares. The size really is whatever you want. I found working with a 3-inch square and then adding 2 strips of 1-inch wide fabric, and I'll show you that a little later. And I ended up with a coaster that was a nice size, probably about 4.5 inches, which seems pretty good to me. All right, so we've cut our 3-inch square. So I'm going to put that down, and here is a 3-inch square that I have, and we're now into beer cans, which seemed a little strange to me on a Monday morning, but here's a beer can. What I do is this is my 3-inch square, and then what I do is I take it to my ironing board, and I fuse paper-backed fusible web to the back of it. And that you simply lay this face down on your ironing board, put the adhesive on the back, and give it a good pressing. Then I remove the paper backing, and I take this piece and I take it back to the ironing board, and I'm going to press it to the center of a piece of scrap cloth. There we go. I will get used to this. I'm really sorry if I'm making everybody seasick here. And by scrap cloth, I mean a piece of muslin, a piece of ugly cloth. You don't really know why you bought it, but you have it in your stash. It really is not going to matter because it's going to be fused in the center of this coaster. So I've just basically, and this is about a 5-inch square of cloth, and I don't go crazy measuring things. I just want to make sure it's larger than the 4.5-inch finished coaster. So I press that on. What I would suggest you do is use a pressing cloth when you're pressing over the metal, because it can get a little scratched up, but if you like that look, that's fine. Plus, it might scratch up the surface of your iron, so you might want to put a cloth on top of that. But I fuse this on. Okay, we've got that fused on. Put that down. Next, we're going to move over to the sewing machine. Oh, no, wait, I forgot one step here. You need to cut 1-inch strips of fabric. I chose these two fabrics, and I cut 1-inch strips on that. So then we're going to take that piece of scrap fabric with the metal iron in the center, and I'm going to move to my sewing machine now. And what I'm going to do, I lost my little sample here, of course. Okay, well, let's use this one here. This was my next step, but we can pretend that we're going to use this one. Oh, here it is. Found it. Okay, here's my little square, and I'm going to move over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to take the strip, and I did the blue first, and you're going to lay the fabric strip on top of the metal, matching the edges, like so, and then you're going to stitch down, right, the 1/4-inch seam down there. Then you're going to trim the ends off, and don't worry about being too neat. And then you're going to move this next strip over, and you're going to sew it to the opposite side. So I've got one sewn to this side, I'm going to sew one to the other side. Then I'm going to take it to the ironing board, and I'm going to press the strips out away from the metal center. Come back to the sewing machine, and I always have my sewing machine, my ironing board really close, and I'm on a wheeled chair, so I'm just swiveling, basically. I'm not getting up and walking over, which actually might be a good suggestion if you're trying to lose weight. However, am trying to do things really quickly, so it's a matter of I just swivel my chair. When you're finished, you're going to sew the same color strip to the top and bottom of that square, and then you end up with this piece right here. And I've pressed all the pieces out from the center of the metal. Great. Now we're going to take it back to the sewing machine, and we're going to add the printed fabric strips. Okay, same thing. So 1, so 2 on the sides, press them out, take it back to the sewing machine, sew 1 to the top and 1 to the bottom, and you're doing great. Press those all out. Now what we're going to do is I kind of roughly trim this up to just outside the size. So, you know, here I've got like about a 1/4 inch around. There again, I'm not trying to square this up. If you're a quilter out there, I'm just trying to roughly get rid of some extra fabric. Now we're going to make a sandwich. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this piece that we've sewn, and we're going to take a roughly cut square of, this is a heavyweight craft interfacing, and it's double-sided, meaning that it has adhesive on both sides. You can find it in the sewing department. Quite often it's called craft interfacing. There is a brand, I believe, out by C&T Publishing that people are using to make fabric bowls and things like that. But I have found no-name brands as well. In the sandwich, we're going to take, first of all, the top of the coaster. We're going to take the heavyweight interfacing. And last but not least is a square of bamboo felt, or any type of felt. I like the bamboo felt because it's recycling. We're going to layer that all together, straighten it all out. Just remember, if you want pins, do not pin into the metal. Only pin on the outside edges. I tend not to pin. I just, for this type of thing, I'm fine. Take this back to your sewing machine, and we'll go back to this sample here, and try to get this a little pretty close here. But what you're going to do is you're going to stitch between the print and the royal blue all around the square through all layers, and then you're also going to stitch about a 1/4 inch away from the outside edge of the printed fabric. And then what I did is I sewed from that outside 1/4 inch right in. Let me turn it to the back so I think you can kind of see the stitching lines a little better for the corners. Okay. And I didn't finish this one. If you notice, I didn't finish this one here just because this was my demo piece. Once it's all stitched, all you're going to do is take your pinking shears, which I've got here. I love these scalloped pinking shears, and simply trim really close to the stitched edges, and I'll bring back a finished one here, and you can see where I have trimmed with the pinking shears. And that is a Pepsi can, a beer can, a 7-Up can, whatever your favorite drink is, coaster.